Donald Trump rolled out a new economic platform today, tweaking it with a higher tax on the rich. That, along with support for the Keystone XL pipeline and a halt on any new regulations from any federal agency, were a few of the highlights.
My plan will reduce the current number of brackets from 7 to 3 and dramatically streamline the process.
In Detroit, the Republican presidential candidate says he wants to simplify the tax code to 12%, 25%, and 33% of income. It's a bump up from what he had proposed. Compared to the current system, the wealthiest would still pay less. The top tax bracket in the U.S. right now is 39.6%. The billionaire also proposed a 15% tax on business income for every business, regardless of size. The current effective tax rate for corporations in the U.S. is 27%. Trump also says he will kill the estate tax. On the energy front, he will cancel America's involvement in the Paris Climate Change Agreement and save the coal industry. The details about just how he will do all of that are yet to be announced. Marc Goldwein is the Senior Vice President and Senior Policy Director for the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. That's a nonprofit and nonpartisan group. So, Marc, maybe you could start broad here and tell us what's your assessment of what Donald Trump announced today?
Well, look, this is definitely a move in the right direction. Donald Trump, we've looked at his previous plans, and they would have added $11.5 trillion to the debt over a decade. This new tax plan still looks costly, but it looks like it's going to be much less costly. Instead of reducing the top rate to 25, it's only 33. So I think this is a good start. We're going to need a lot more information before we see if this is actually overall a pro-growth and fiscally responsible reset.
Okay, so when you say it's costly, what do you mean exactly?
What I mean is Donald Trump supports a lot of tax cuts. And when we looked at his previous tax plan, it would have added about $9 trillion to the national debt just from lower tax revenue. This new tax plan looks like it's not going to lose as much, but there's not yet enough detail to know exactly how much in tax revenue it will lose.
All right. Well, of course, Hillary Clinton was giving her assessment of the plan today, and we have a clip of that. Let's have a listen.
His tax plans will give super big tax breaks to large corporations and the really wealthy. He wants to basically just repackage trickle-down economics.
What do you think of her comments?
Well, I think she has a really good point. You can't borrow your way to economic growth. But Trump has a point, too. Lower tax rates can actually help spur economic growth. But they can only spur growth if they're combined with cuts in tax breaks and cuts in spending that will reduce overall debt. Right now, Donald Trump's plan would still substantially increase debt and therefore slow the growth of the economy.
So now his plan is not terribly friendly to the environment. I mean, we mentioned in our setup that he wants to help the coal industry. He's also talking about reviewing and limiting the powers of the Environmental Protection Agency. Of course, he was also talking about restarting the whole plan from Canada, the Keystone XL pipeline. Do you think all of those sorts of strategies are going to be good for the economy?
No, look, I think that some of the things that Donald Trump talked about are going to be net wins for the economy. Some will be net losses, and some might be good for GDP, but bad for other things, like the amount of carbon in the environment. What we're seeing here is a mixed bag, but definitely an improvement from where Donald Trump was in terms of specificity and in terms of trying to ground these plans a little bit more in reality.
Now, when you look at what Hillary Clinton is proposing, what would you say her plan, how does it stack up against his?
Well, Hillary Clinton's plan is both much more modest and much more responsible. Basically, she wants to spend about $1.5 trillion more, and she wants to tax about $1.5 trillion more to pay for it. So she rightly comes out even, give or take. Now, the problem is debt still grows under Clinton's plan because it still grows under current law, but she at least doesn't make it very much worse.
Now, this is part about business tax being reduced to 15%. Can the U.S. afford that?
I don't think we can afford a 15% rate unless we want to rethink the way we do taxation. But I also think we need to reduce our corporate rate from its current level. Right now, at 35%, the United States has the highest statutory tax rate of corporations in the developed world. So some reduction, maybe to 28 to 25%, accompanied with reductions in tax breaks, I think would be really good for U.S. economic growth.
So now, of course, we know, because he says it all the time, that Donald Trump is a very successful businessman. That's how he describes himself. You know, very focused on, you would think, on budget and being prudent and so forth. Does that fit with the type of economic plan that he's proposing?
It's not what we've seen so far. So far, we've seen a tremendously irresponsible plan. But my hope is that today's speech is the beginning of a turnaround, the beginning of a more realistic plan that maybe can actually make America great again.
What do you mean, though? What, you think that he's going to add the type of detail that's going to suddenly make his candidacy seem credible?
Well, we've already seen improvements in his tax plan. As I said before, the previous version cost $9 trillion. The new version has somewhat less tax reductions. Maybe it's going to cost $5 or $6 trillion. We don't have the numbers yet. This is still way too much, but it's moving in the right direction. So my hope is he just keeps moving in that right direction little by little.
What are your thoughts on the type of people that he has brought in on his economic team, the advisors and so forth that he's appointing?
Well, he has every economist named Stephen that I'm aware of on his team, so that's a good start. Look, it's not really about his advisors, it's about his plans. And right now his plans don't add up, but I'm really hopeful that he's going to make the adjustments like he did to his top tax rate so that eventually they will.
Now, the timing of his announcement today, a number of people making the observation that he's quite keen to change up the topic, so to speak, after a very disastrous 10 days of campaigning, a lot of scandals and so forth. Do you think what he announced today is going to have the type of impact he would hope?
I don't know, but I do hope we can get back to some substance in this campaign. I think it's been really unfortunate. It's been such a cult of personality. We haven't really had the opportunity to actually debate the issues. So I do hope we can actually have a serious discussion about what the tax rate should be, how we want to balance economic growth and environmental regulation, what we want to do about trade. These are serious discussions we need to be having as a country.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.